Hi friends, today we are going to discuss about the Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016. Myself, Dr. Suresh Padadmat, Head of Telemedicine Center and also the Head of Forensic Psychiatry Services, Nimans, Bangalore. I have done my PhD in law from National Law School, so I have this credibility of at least to talk about the legal issues from the medical perspective. Before I start my presentation, I would like to have a disclaimer. This presentation is for academic purpose only. If you would like to have any legal opinion, please do contact an advocate. Coming back to this, the disability in the global perspective, that World Health Organization has clearly said that it is around 15% of the population of the world has disability. So in that, 80% of them live in developing countries like India. So that is the reason we require to have a UNCRPD kind of what we call it as a convention or a treaty, so that every country starts doing something towards the persons with disability. Coming to India, the number of population who are disabled is approximately 2.21 crore. That is as per the 2011 census. And this census was based on the definition of disability from the 1995 Persons with Disability Act. So, to understand, at that time it was only 7 disabilities were notified under the Persons with Disability Act of 1995. So, considering 2011 census and the 1995 Disability Act, which were 7 disabilities, it was 2.2 crore. So that means if there is any change in the definition of disability, the prevalence is either going to increase or decrease. So keeping this in mind, we will move forward. India ratified the United Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability on 1st of October 2007. Once we had ratified, now we have to align our national legislation to the United Nations. From this, there was a paradigm shift which has occurred. The paradigm shift is the disability. Whatever welfare measure was earlier was based upon charity. Now it is no more a charity. It is now rights based. That important paradigm shift has been brought by the UNCRPD. Hence, there has been a new legislation which has been implemented, or what you call it as passed by our parliament. It is called as RPWD Act of 2016, and it has replaced the Persons with Disability Act of 1995. UNCRPD not only changed the paradigm of looking from charity to the rights based, it also changed the definition of disability. As per the UNCRPD, the definition of disability is the interaction between the persons with impairment and attitudinal and environmental barriers which hinders their full and effective participation in the society on equal basis with others. See, we all know about the environmental barrier. If a person with disability, especially locomotor disability, he is unable to come to the court or to the school or to the college because there is no ramp provided. That is the environmental barrier. Now the issue is, what is this attitudinal barrier? The attitudinal barrier is basically if the policymaker or a decision maker, or if possible a principal of a school says this, that this blind person cannot be educated. How can he read? How will he travel? That attitudinal barrier is considered is the part of the definition now. Earlier there was only environmental barrier. Now an attitudinal barrier has been brought into the concept. Please do understand, disability is not a static concept. It is evolving and it is continue to evolve. Earlier it was considered as handicap, various other definitions were used. But now it is environmental and attitudinal barrier of the people towards the persons with disability. Disability is not static. It is a dynamic in nature. Please do understand. A person who develops disability is not static. The disability may worsen or disability may improve. For example, if a person develops a stroke, a kind of weakness, maybe right hand or a left leg or a right leg and left hand, both weakness may be considered as a disability. Over a period of time, this weakness may worsen. He may have a second stroke or maybe a third stroke. But at the same time, there is a possibility he may improve to some extent. Hence, The disability is not considered as static no more. It's a dynamic in nature. It may improve, it may worsen. At the same time, it's a complex multidimensional. That means it's not only a medical concept, it is also a social construct. The reason being is we have brought in something called as attitudinal and environmental barrier. Hence, it has a multi-dimension. One is impairment, which is basically because of the medical in nature. We brought in attitudinal and environmental barrier, which is social construct. Hence, it is a multi-dimensional in nature, and also it is very common in the poor people. Hence, it's basically considered, or what we call it as developing countries. Hence, it's an economical and financial implications are very huge. Now, after UNCRPD has brought this rights-based approach, no, it's no more a charity. It's a human rights approach has to be taken to this. And also, they have to be given equal opportunity to participate in the society. Hence, now it's no more a medical issue, it's a social issue. And also, it's the reason that has been considered as biopsychosocial model. And hence, currently in India, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment is looking after the disability. And hence, there has been a department has been set up. It is called as Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disability. Hence, please do understand the disability is not a static, it's a dynamic in nature and it is evolving continuously. Coming to the Rights of Persons with Disability Act of 2016. This act was passed in the Parliament on 27th of December 2016. It has 102 sections and also 17 chapters. And RPWD Act 2016 Central Rules was passed on 15 June of 2017. At the same time, Disability Assessment Guidelines has been notified on 5th of January 2018. Coming to the Rights of Persons with Disability Act, see, there are various definitions has been put forward, especially under the RPWD Act. Persons with disability means a person with long-term physical, mental, intellectual or sensory impairment which in interaction with the barriers hinders his full and effective participation in the society. Please do understand there are certain points which have to be kept in the mind. First and the foremost is long-term. There is no definition of long-term. It is left to the clinician to decide what we call it as a long-term. And at the same time, it is a physical, mental, intellectual and sensory impairment which in interaction with the barriers, here they have subsumed both the barriers, attitudinal and environmental, and hinders his full participation in the society. This is disability. That means disability, there is no any specific number has been put for persons with disability. However, there is one more definition which has been put forward and a term has been coined. It is called as persons with benchmark disability. The persons with benchmark disability means a person with not less than 40% of specified disability. This benchmark disability is those people who get social welfare benefit. Along with this, there has been a new term has been coined now, something called as persons with disability having high support needs. That means a person who has a benchmark disability, along with that, they require intense support towards physical, psychological, otherwise to carry out the activities of daily living, access to the facilities and services, and to make day-to-day decisions. That means there is a requirement of a person next to him to do all these activities. For that, persons with disability having high support needs have been coined. And these people need to seek support. Suppose if there is no family member available and there is no guardian available, they can apply for it. And there is a methodology to do this. A person with benchmark disability or any other person or any organization on his behalf may apply for a high support for the authority. I'll come to this authority in a little while. Authority will now refer this to an assessment board. The assessment board will look into 360-degree of assessment and they will realize whether this person requires a high support needs or not. If they feel that there is a requirement of high support needs and the assessment is given in writing to the authority, and the authority will take appropriate steps in either nominating a person or maybe appointing a guardian, and the supports as mentioned with the report will be carried forward. So now coming to this act. This act has changed from 7 to 21 disabilities. In the previous legislation, of Persons with Disability Act of 1995, there were only 7 disabilities. Now under the Right to Persons with Disability Act of 2016, there are 21 disabilities have been formulated. And these people who have these disabilities are enabled, or what we call it as, can get social welfare benefits under this act. Now we will discuss all these 21 disabilities. First and the foremost is blindness. A blind is an individual is unable to see. So the clear-cut assessment will give the person has blindness and the person will get the benefit. Similarly, there is something called as low vision. Low vision is basically there is through various assessment of visual acuity and Snellen's chart, they are going to assess the low vision and also the field of vision, how much he is able to see. Depending upon that, the low vision certificate is given, and these are the people, some of them, if they are above 40%, they will get the benefit of social welfare benefits. Leprosy cured person. Leprosy is a bacterium which is also called as Microbacterium leprae, and it is also called as Hansen's disease. It not only attacks the skin, it also attacks the nerves. Hence, there will be some disabilities. And also, stigma associated with this leprosy has enabled them to get the social welfare benefit under this legislation. At the same time, there is something called as hearing impairment and also total loss of hearing. So hearing impairment is partial, who cannot hear 60 to 70 decibel, and also total inability of hearing is above 70 decibels. So on that basis, again, the disability certificate will be issued. Locomotor disability, a person who is unable to move around because there is a problem in his legs, either maybe bones, joints and muscles, will be considered as locomotor disability. He requires varying degree of assistance. Maybe the physical requirement, maybe crutches maybe he requires, or else maybe walker may be required. At the same time, he also may require some wheelchair also at some extreme form of disabilities. The one more new category has entered into the disability is dwarfism. Dwarfism is a growth disorder characterized by shorter than the average body weight. And they were able to enter into the disability because our society never accepted them. Now, considering the attitudinal barrier and they have not been taken into the mainstream, this RPWD Act has given them the platform to come forward, and the social welfare benefit measures will be given to them. Intellectual disability, also earlier it was called as mental retardation. Now we have to use the term as intellectual disability, a condition characterized by significant limitation both in intellectual functioning, maybe reasoning, learning, problem solving, and generalization of the skills, and in adaptive behavior. So this mental retardation requires what we call it as support from womb to tomb. That's the way it has been considered because there is no treatment available at this point of time. Mental disorder or mental disorder refers to a substantial disorders of thinking, mood, perception, orientation or memory that grossly impairs the judgment, behavior, capacity to recognize reality or ability to meet the ordinary demands of life. Please do understand this mental disorder, this definition has been taken from the Mental Health Care Act of 2017. Coming to the autism, or also called as autism spectrum disorder. If we had seen this movie, My Name is Khan by Shah Rukh Khan, he's acting like a person with autism. See, autism or autism spectrum disorder refers to a broad range of condition characterized by challenges with social skills, emotions, repetitive behavior, verbal and non-verbal communication. People with autisms or autism spectrum disorders have trouble understanding what other people are thinking and feeling. Since they are unable to understand them, they are also unable to communicate their thinking and feeling very freely to others, even to their parents. For example, if a father has gone outside, maybe for 1 week, maybe for a leisure or a tour or on official basis, after 2 weeks when he comes back, a child who is around 6 year or 7 year usually runs towards their dad and he will hug the dad and ask him why you were missing for so many days. But in case of autism and autism spectrum disorders, the child will be least interested with the human beings. So even the father comes back from the work, he does not reciprocate the emotions, or he does not reciprocate the communication that you are not there, I'm missing you. Those are the things which will be starkly missing in persons with autism or autism spectrum disorder. Cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a disabling physical condition in which muscle coordination is impaired due to damage in the brain. This occurs usually before the childbirth or during the childbirth, and it is lifelong in nature. It is incurable and it is not progressive. So this cerebral palsy, once it happens, the certificate issued will be permanent for life. Muscular dystrophy is a group of neuromuscular genetic disorder that causes muscle weakness, and over a loss of muscles mass will happen, and over a period of time the muscle paralysis develops. They may not be able to breathe properly, and they may have a severe condition. One of them is a motor neuron disorder. Stephen Hawking was a well-known scientist who suffered from muscular dystrophy, or what we call it as the motor neuron disorder, and this that falls into this category. Chronic neurological conditions. Chronic neurological conditions are many in number: Alzheimer's dementia or any other dementia, dystonia, movement disorder, Huntington's disease, Wilson's disease, movement disorder, epilepsy, head injury, encephalitis, meningitis. All those sequelae comes under the chronic neurological condition. Please do understand, this was a huge chunk which was missed in the previous disability, and now they have been given a platform under this RPWD Act. Multiple sclerosis, although this is a chronic neurological condition, however, it has got what we call it as a special mention under this category. Why, we don't know, but this is also a chronic neurological condition where the neuronal covering has been attacked by our own immune system. It is an autoimmune disorder. Parkinsonism disease, again, it is also a chronic neurological condition which occurs at the age of 55 to 60, but again, this also has got a separate category apart from the chronic neurological condition, and it's basically, it affects the muscles, neurons. There will be the person will have tremors, stiffness, and there will be gait instability, and it is a progressive disorder. At this point of time, there is no cure available. And the other important group which has entered into this is acid attack victims. Acid attack victims, usually the acid will be thrown on their face, and the lady or the person who is suffering from acid attack, the survivors will have to go through various surgeries. It may be 10, 20, 25 surgeries have undergone to correct their disfigurement. It's not the issue of disfigurement, the way the society looks at them. Once, if the face is what we call it as ugly, disfigured, they will not get any opportunity to work, employment, and the society looks them in a way they are the accused rather than the survivors. And the many a time there is a secondary victimization which occurs because of the society. And I think this RPWD Act bringing acid attack victims under the RPWD is one of the best move which they have done in our society. Special learning disabilities, or what we call it as specific learning disabilities. It is a group of disabling condition which hampers ability to listen, speak, write, spell, or mathematical calculation. Either it may be alone or it may be separate. This is a classical one of the movie which has been very well known is Tare Zameen Par, where the child artist who has a difficulty in mathematics, he finds it very difficult to pass the exam, but they're intellectually they will be very intelligent or maybe average intelligent, but the problem is specific learning disability will block them. For example, many of you people may find it very difficult to do arithmetics, algebra, geometry, and whatever amount of your hard work you do, you find it very difficult to understand. Similarly, there are many kids who find it very difficult to understand the language, the rules and regulations of the language. They find it very difficult to write those language. They are all called as SLD. They are in huge number in our population. Because of this SLD, many of the kids drop out of the colleges or schools, and that's the reason this RPWD Act recognizes this. The next condition is hemophilia. Hemophilia is a blood disorder. Whenever there is a cut, injury to our body, the blood starts coming out, and the blood clot occurs immediately in normal people. In hemophilia, there is a loss of protein, and this is because of genetic in nature. Usually the females are the carrier and the males are the sufferers. Whenever there is a cut, the blood doesn't clot here. The blood continues to ooze out, and there may be Sometimes if there is a slightly bigger cut, if there is no adequate precautions is taken, the person may die because of bleeding. So hemophilia is a condition which has entered into the RPWD Act. Sickle cell disease, again this is a group of disorders from the blood where the red blood corpuscles, the protein which is forming these RBCs becomes misshaped and the RBC becomes sickle cell. So sickle cell cells are destroyed very fast and they develop anemia, and it is a genetically transferable disease. Again, this requires for significant what we call it as blood transfusion. Similarly, there is another disorder called as thalassemia. Thalassemia is again a genetically inherited blood disorder which is characterized by production of a less or abnormal hemoglobin. These hemoglobins are destroyed very fast and the anemia sets in. And the person who is suffering from thalassemia has to undergo blood transfusion every week or every month, depending upon the severity of the nature. Hence, again, the RPWD Act has recognized thalassemia and the social welfare benefits will be given under the RPWD Act. Speech and language disability, a person who has difficulty in speaking or what we call it as stammering, stuttering, aphasia, those are the people who come under this category. Multiple disabilities is basically the combination of all these 20 disabilities in one or two or three more is considered as a multiple disability, and there is a formula which has been given under the assessment pro forma that formula to be used when there is a multiple disabilities are present rather than adding, and the disability total assessment should not cross more than 99 to 100%. So if it crosses, it's not valid. So there is a formula which keeps the disability assessment within 100. Coming to rights of the persons with disability, now we will discuss about these categories of disabled people, what rights they entitle under this RPWD Act. Now we shall discuss some of the important rights which are entitled under the RPWD Act. First and the foremost, Section 5, the right to live in the community. A person with disability cannot be said that you have a disability, you do not have right to live in the community. That is not acceptable. And now this legislation gives a persons with disability to live in the community, they cannot be sent out. Section 6, protection from cruel, inhuman treatment. For example, persons with mental retardation, autism, or persons with mental illness, they are treated very badly in the society. For example, a worst accident I can give you is Ervadi tragedy, which occurred during 2000 and 2001 in Tamil Nadu, in Ervadi, where a 26 to 27 persons with mental illness were chained to the tree, and there was a sudden fire occurrence, and 26 to 27 persons with mental illness were burnt alive. And this kind of chaining, the people are not allowed, and they cannot be treated inhumanly and also cruel. These kind of treatments are not allowed. Section 7, protection from abuse, violence, exploitation, and also whenever these such kind of issues are seen, an executive magistrate may discuss and also to talk to the judicial magistrate, and then a legal aid is given and the case can be registered on the person who are violating their rights. Section 8, equal protection and safety in situation of risk, armed conflict, humanitarian emergency, and natural disasters. I can give you my personal own experience. During tsunami, I was posted in Andaman Nicobar. During the what we call it as the survivors who are able to survive this tsunami, many of the disabled people would have died, but whoever survives, now they have to fight for the meager resources available. And these survivors camps which were established, whenever there is a relief material is brought, the normal people will go and they surround the lorries or the vehicle which bring these relief material. The disabled people will not be able to compete with the normal people for those meager resources. That's what is here. The equal protection has to be given for them. Another example I can give you is Uttarakhand tsunami, what we call it as Uttarakhand flash floods. Again, I had been a volunteer to work there. I was posted in Badrinath. In that situation also, I could see many of the disabled people had to go and stand in the queue to get the repatriation from the Badrinath to Joshimath through the helicopter. And early morning, 4 o'clock, even the disabled people has to come and stand in the queue. And that's what it is. This legislation says no, it has to be given equal protection and safety in humanitarian crisis. I think this is a master stroke under this RPWD Act. Coming to section 9, no child with disability shall be separated from his or her parents on the grounds of disability. So that is not allowed. Coming to the section 10, this is a very important. No persons with disability shall be subjected to any medical procedure which leads to infertility, either may be temporary or permanent, without the free and informed consent from the persons with disability. For this matter, I would like to discuss about a Supreme Court judgment, that is Suchitra Srivatsa versus the Union Territory of Chandigarh Administration, which occurred in 2009. A young girl who was staying in one of the government hostel, or what we call it as government halfway home, after a period of 1 to 2 years, she becomes pregnant. And of course, the superintendent of the institution became extremely anxious, and of course, they immediately lodged the FIR. When the investigation took place, and they found that there were 9 accused were involved, in that 2 were women. And these 7 people were found to be sexually abusing this young girl who has mental retardation, what we call it as intellectual disability. Immediately, the police took the survivor to the nearest medical college, and she was subjected to the assessment. And in the assessment, they found that she has disability, that is intellectual disability, and it was almost around 16 to 18 weeks of pregnancy. Immediately, the board gave a green signal because she is unable to understand what is pregnancy, and she will not be able to take care of the child, and it may be hampering her mental status if she continues with the pregnancy. Hence, the medical termination of pregnancy, or what we call it as abortion, was indicated. But when they wanted to do, and the High Court of Punjab also gave the green signal. Unfortunately, the lady refused to give permission, or what we call it as consent, and she said she wanted the child. And now this case was appealed to the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, the discussion came with the rights of the reproductive, what we call it as reproductive rights of a persons with disability came into picture. And then a chairman of the, or what we call it as a chairperson of the National Trust Act for Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardation with Multiple Disability, which was passed in 2000. The act was passed in the 2000. The chairperson was called in, and the chairperson clearly said that it is our duty to provide guardianship to this lady, and we will uphold her wish to have a child. And the Supreme Court agreed to this, and that lady in December 2009 gave birth to a young, healthy, what we call it as a female child. She's called as Pari. Now on this date, she is 11-year-old, she is healthy, she is studying, and she is what we call it a star of that institution now. And see, if we had gone with the medical institution or with the High Court, we would have killed this small child. And now the child is alive and she is doing very well. And this is one of the best example I can give you. Our judiciary took a proactive step in protecting the rights, especially the reproductive rights of the persons with disability. And here, it's not only for persons with disability women, it's also for all women in our country. They have a right for reproduction. Reproductive rights is in their hands, not in their spouse or boyfriend or somebody else. But however, now the issue which is coming up with the young girl Pari is she's born out of a marriageless, fatherless child, and this may be an issue in forthcoming years. Coming to the other rights, Section 11 talks about access for polling station, technology and disability friendly. Recently we had Lok Sabha election. During that time, every polling booth there was wheelchair was made available. This is what we call it as access for franchising their rights. Coming to section 12, now I'll be discussing very important concepts. I request you to listen to me carefully. Section 12 and 13. Section 12 talks about access to justice, access to court, assisting equipments, personals, methods, means, technology, documents. That means now all our courts should be disabled friendly. It cannot say that we do not have any special equipments to assist the disabled people. That means the court should now have to upgrade themselves to provide this access to justice for persons with disability. Coming to the legal capacity, that means every person with disabled is considered equal before the law and they have all the capacity to own or inherit property, movable or immovable, control their financial affairs, have access to bank loans, mortgage and other forms of financial credits. Earlier, many a time in a family, just because he's disabled, they never used to get the property. Now this law says no, they have equal access to that property. Coming to this, they also under this act, they have come up with something called a section 14 provision of guardianship. In this guardianship, this is again a concept which has been brought from the UNCRPD. Earlier, the guardianship means the guardian used to take the decision. Now that is not allowed. There are two concepts has been brought in. One is limited guardianship and the plenary guardianship, or what we call it as total guardianship. I'll repeat, limited guardianship, plenary or total guardianship. So these concepts have been taken. Both the concepts have to consider the joint, or what we call it as a shared decision making. For example, I would like to take some time to explain you in this matter. Suppose if you get married according to your wish and will, and you're not going to talk to your father and mother, and it is your choice and they have nothing to say and you have made the decision. That is love, you may call it as a love marriage. It's a rights-based decision making. Now coming to the other end. You who is going to get married do not have anything to say. Your parents are going to decide. That is proxy decision making. That is on the other end. So on one hand we have rights-based decision making. On the other hand we have proxy decision making. So now this RPWD Act, considering all our cultural customs and considering the way we family function, they introduce something called as joint decision making. The concept is like a love cum arranged marriage which occurs in our society nowadays. Yes, of course, both the parties, the father and mother and the family do agree, and they also take consent from the boy and the girl. Invariably, it still errs on the side of the male. The woman, the girl who is getting married may not be asked, but however, somehow we are moving towards this center part, what we call it as shared decision making slowly. But I think this is one of the wonderful concept where this, what we call it as shared decision making, or what we call it as joint decision making, plays an important role in our society. Not only that, you may be a doctor or a judge. Suppose tomorrow you have to buy a property. For example, you want to buy a house. So how will you decide? So you may have some 50 lakh rupees. So you will just go and buy it. No. What will you do is you will talk to your friends, your relatives, your family members. You will do internet search. You will go and talk to the broker. You will see 5-6 houses. You take legal assistance. You will take assistance from other brokers. You may take assistance from your family members. You may talk to the neighbor of that property. With all these assistance, after a week or 2 weeks, you will buy that property. That means you being educated, you being highly intellectual, you required support from various people to take this decision. Similarly, the persons with disability require support. That is what we call it as supported decision making, shared decision making, or joint decision making. So that concept has been brought here. So there is no more what we call it as proxy decision making. the proxy decision making, or what we call it as the total guardianship, can take place. It will be only for a specific decision making or a specific financial. The rest, the personhood continues to exist. That's what's the essence of this Right to Persons with Disability Act. For example, I want to repeat this. Limited is basically joint decision making, limited to specific period, specific decision, specific situation, operates according to the will of the person with disability. That is what we call it as limited decision making. And coming to the total, total is basically requires such support, or where the limited guardianship has to be granted many times, total guardianship can be given. For example, with the severe intellectual disability, they may require this total guardianship, but still here you cannot strip him from the personhood. You have to provide him his wish, and choice has to be given amount of what we call it as preferences before you take a decision. Coming to educational reservation, all governmental institution of higher education and other education institution receiving aid from the government should give 5% educational reservation. That's a very important decision has been taken. So 5% reservation. Job reservation for 4%, like blindness and low vision will get 1%. Deaf and hard of hearing 1%. Locomotor disability, cerebral palsy, leprosy cure, dwarfism, and acid attack victims, muscular dystrophy will get 1%. Autism, intellectual disability, mental illness, SLD, and multiple disabilities get 1%. So the job reservation has been, earlier it was 3%, and now it has been 4%. Under the old Persons with Disability Act of 1995, it was only 3%. Now under the new Act of RPWD Act, it is 4%, and it is applicable to the government institutions and government aided institutions. However, the private institution or societies or corporates can give this job reservation depending upon the number of people they have employed. The disabled people, they will get income tax benefits, or what we call it as rebate. Coming to the section 44, if you are going to build any building, or already you have built a building, it has to be disability friendly. That is very essential, and it is as per the central government rules. And if you have already built your infrastructure, or you may say that, sir, I have already built an hospital. Excellent, but you have 5 years now to modify that. If you don't do that, the government will come heavily on the institution. Coming to the social welfare measures, there are various social welfare measures have been brought under the RPWD Act. First and the foremost is a disability pension, unemployment allowance, and also what we call it as caregiver allowance. If a person with a severe disability or high support needs is providing care, so he may get an allowance. This concept has never been there and has been brought here, but however, how it's going to be implemented is a big challenge. At the same time, health insurance and also various other benefits have been given, and it will be dependent upon the individual states how they are going to implement, how they are going to give these benefits. So, but however, the social welfare measures are innovative in nature. They can be increased, and it depends upon the individual states. Coming to the institutions, whichever institutions which are running needs to be registered under the RPWD Act. If you are providing care for a person with disability, definitely you have to register. Suppose if you are a mental health establishment like mental hospitals, you need, if you are already registered under the Mental Health Care Act of 2017, you need not register here under the RPWD Act, but you have to send a copy of the mental health registration under Mental Health Care Act. Copy has to be sent to RPWD Act that I have registered there. Coming to the certification, this is one of the important concepts. The whole issue of a person with disability recognition and how they are identified depends upon the certification. Section 56 notify, under that they have notified the guidelines already, and there are various authorities have been formed. There are roughly, we can divide it into 3. One is advisory board, and the commissioners, the what we call it as the disability commissioners, and the district level committees. Coming to the central advisory board and a state advisory board, these are more of advisory in nature, and they play a very important role in policy making. For the implementation of the Act, there has been commissioner, chief commissioner. In the central, they have, earlier it was one, it is now the chief commissioner, and two, the other deputy commissioners will be there for the under this act. There are state commissioners also be appointed by the state governments. At the district level, there will be committees to look into the local district, local issues, and to implement this legislation. Coming to the disability certification, the form number 4 has to be sent along with the proof of residence to recent size photograph, and Aadhaar card is mandatory now. They have to apply to the medical authority or any other notified competent authority under the state. They have to submit this. Those authorities will verify the credentials, do the assessment, and they will upload, they will give us a copy of the certificate and they will upload to the central server. Then the UDID card will be given. I'll come to that UDID card now. This is how this certificate looks, and this is the different 21 different disabilities which are under the RPWD Acts have been mentioned here. And various forms are there, various like form 5 for certificate of disability, especially for locomotor disability, 6 for multiple disabilities, 7 for other disabilities, and by chance the doctor or the authority who is supposed to give the disability rejects it, and he has to reject by writing under the form 8. That is very essential, because it's no more a charity, it's a right. You are going to deny somebody's rights, that has to be in writing. Coming to the misuse of disability certificate, earlier there was no any checks and balances. Now under section 91, whoever fraudulently avails or attempts to avail any benefits under the RPWD Act, under the benchmark disability, they can be punished up to 2 years imprisonment and to 1 lakh fine, or both. So actually the gravity of the offense was very serious. Similarly, the punishment is serious under this legislation. At the same time, for the persons with disability, you are not going to commit any kinds of atrocity by calling them by offensive like mental, psycho, deaf, dumb, those kinds of words in a public arena or in a public place. If you do that under the atrocity, you can be punished for 6 months imprisonment. That means never intentionally insult or intimidate a person with disability. They, under this act, have been given due respect. They deserve these rights. So you are not going to do these kinds of name calling by mental, psycho, deaf, dumb. These will not be used for persons with disability. We are a welfare society. We have to remove the stigma, and we have to encourage them to join under the mainstream. That's the reason this RPWD legislation has been brought in. Special courts has to be set up under section 84. Under section 85, special public prosecutor has to be appointed. So that's where the issue comes, how much we have the resources, and if the resources are there, this is one of the best legislation in the world. Coming to the critical appraisal of the RPWD Act, now we have discussed about the legislation. We will see what are the positive points and the negative points. Of course, this legislation is one of the best. It's aspirational in nature. It has increased from 7 to 21 different disabilities have been what we call it as recognized, and the central government keeps the rights to increase the number of disabilities whenever they want without going for the amendment of the legislation. Of course, we have increased from 70 to 21, and that means the number of disabled people also has increased. Earlier it was hardly around 2%. Now it is going to be 10%. Imagine, 10% is a huge number for our population of 130 crore. That means 13 crore are there. If the government has to give 1,000 rupees disability pension, 1,000 rupees per month for 13 crore population, per month the government has to spend 13,000 crore. I'll repeat, 13,000 crore per month. And it's not a charity, it's their rights. Per annum it is 156,000 crores has to be spent. So this is the obligation on the states now. Of course, funding is a big issue, and if there is a political will, I think we can move forward. And there is a portal has been formed which is called as swalambancard.gov in, and whoever wants to get the disability certificate along with UDID, they have to go to this unique disability ID, this swalambancard.gov in. They have to visit this website, apply for disability card and also for the unique ID, disability ID card. And this is how the disability, what we call it as the portal looks it. It is very user friendly, and now there has been a translations have been going on so that the local language, this wallenbergcard.gov in these website has been they're getting modified, and of course this is one of the best, and also they are making these websites disabled friendly. And this swalambancard.gov.in is going to curtail the tampering of the disabled certificate. Earlier they used to have what we call it as people used to Xerox it and they used to avail benefits. Now if a person like a doctor is going to assess a disability certificate, assess them on the assess the disability, and that certificate has to be uploaded to the central server. If somebody wants to know whether this person is disabled and what is the percentage, he can cross verify what is there in the server, and the UDID card will be given, and it will be a unique number which is attached to the other card, and the whatever the disability pension or the welfare measure is there, it will directly go to his bank account. That is the beauty of this. Coming to certification, the guidelines of issuing certificates are more difficult to implement. Simple reason is how many of our rural population have access to internet. That's a big question we have to answer. But how many of them are educated? Many of the disabled people are illiterate, and there are many studies to say that they drop out of the schools at the high school or at the what we call it as primary school or at the pre-university schools. So the access to internet is a big question. Mandatory specialists are required to sign this certificate. This is one of the biggest drawback of this legislation. For example, if a person who has a disability of neurology, a neurologist has to sign. For a psychiatric disability, a psychiatrist has to sign. Come on. Earlier there was something called as a disability board, which was very easy, and a patient could have approached the PHC from the doctor, PHC doctor or the medical officer of the PHC is convinced, he just can sign and take it to the district hospital, get it signed and bring it and give it at the door. Unfortunately, this is going to be a big hindrance. So mandatory specialist has to be removed. This is my personal opinion. Otherwise, the many of our patients who require disability, especially who are in the rural population, will never get this disability benefit. Of course, online applying and private establishments or private medical colleges, private corporate hospitals need to be recognized, because we are talking about a huge disabled population who requires this certificate, who requires to be in the mainstream for equal participation. For that reason, the certification process has to be made easy, and I think at the earliest we make it this amendment for the requirement of specialists has to be removed, and because the number of these specialists are also very less, and those working in the government sector also will be very minimal. But of course, the state government can make certain changes, but many of the state government are not proactive in changing those state rules in favor of persons with disability. I think there is a requirement from the center to start a proactive way of making easy for issuing the certificate and uploading it to the server. To conclude, this is a landmark legislation, but the issue here is funding, finance, and political will at the state, because many states may not provide social welfare measures, and they may say that we do not have adequate funds, and that will be a defeating purpose of this what we call it as legislation. Legislation is highly aspirational in nature but difficult to implement in spirit. However, it is one of the best positive steps towards the right direction. To overall, if you look at this, This is one of the best legislation we have. The issue is implementation. Hi friends, before I conclude, I request you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, that is youtube.com C Suresh Padmat. There are many videos, and if you would like to see such kinds of legislation, legal issues, medical legal issues, please do subscribe and like this channel. At the same time, I also request you to go through this vcapable.com. I have taken many of the infographics from there, and this is a dedicated website for persons with disability. Please do encourage persons with disability to mainstream them. And definitely we are from a welfare society. We should do our bit to mainstream them. It's not a charity, it is their rights. Thank you very much for your patience listening. Please subscribe to this channel.